This woman is rescued alive from a hospital that was destroyed after a deadly earthquake hit Indonesia once again. The 6.2 magnitude quake struck 36 kilometers south of Mamuju, the capital of Sulawesi Island. It shook the island on Friday night, causing landslides, a power outage, and many destroyed buildings. Thousands of residents fled their homes to seek safety, but many are still trapped under collapsed buildings. Hours earlier on Thursday, a 5.9 magnitude quake struck in the same district, also damaging several houses. Indonesia is no stranger to earthquakes, volcanic eruptions and tsunamis because of its location on the Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates collide. In 2018, thousands of people were killed after a 7.5 magnitude quake and tsunami struck the city of Palu, also on Sulawesi Island. Authorities have warned that the area could be hit by strong aftershocks and to avoid the beachfront in case of a tsunami.
Pieter van der Pol is waiting for his inoculation, but the 71-year-old doesn't know when that will be. In other countries, the elderly are first in line for vaccinations against COVID-19, but not in the Netherlands. Many of Pieter's fellow residents have died in the past year, and months of quarantine and restrictions are taking their toll.
Hundreds of residents in Dutch care homes are dying of COVID every week, but not a single one has been inoculated yet. The so-called flexible Dutch vaccination strategy has led to great confusion about who will be vaccinated first and what vaccine will be used. This has not only created frustration and anger, but also fear. Now the British variant has entered the country.
Virologists say it's a race against time before the Netherlands will face a serious outbreak of the new strain, and they're urging the government to get a proper vaccination strategy in order.
Bob, Norway says COVID-19 vaccines may be too risky for the very old and the terminally ill after officials there reported 23 people died in the country a short time after they received their first dose. Of those deaths, 13 so far have shown common side effects, which may have contributed to severe reactions in the elderly. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, I think if you're really gravidly ill and you're in, say, hospice, or you're in a palliative care situation where you're very, very frail and fragile, the side effects could be somewhat devastating to you. But that is very, very rare. I have seen 90-year-olds and 80-year-olds here who have been in nursing homes and have been immunized with no problem whatsoever. They will basically have the side effects that most of us would have. But like everything else with this virus and this vaccine, there are exceptions to the rule. So it is possible, and I know in Norway this is what they're saying, that they will not immunize people who are frail and have many comorbidities. And that's probably judicious. So those people should stay isolated, and wear a mask and keep socially distanced.
The careers are on hold as the three kids do their schooling at home. In the Stein-Rosenberg family in Berlin, the children quickly adapted to this lockdown, the second since the pandemic started.
Jetzt ist leichter, weil jetzt hat man sich dran gewöhnt. Und jetzt schickten die Lehrer das immer in die gleiche. Weil früher war es immer so, dass die eins über Dateien, die anderen haben es in den Chat gestrickt.
Sebastian is a photographer. Claudia plays first flute at the Berlin State Opera. COVID has put those jobs on hold.
Wir können das jetzt schon ein bisschen besser, ist nicht mehr ganz so stressig wie am Anfang, aber es wird dann jetzt doch schon ein bisschen lang.
And no one knows when normal life will begin again.
Wenn man sich die Impfzahlen anguckt, sind in Berlin gerade 0,7%. Da werden wir bestimmt bis zum eingeschränkt sein bis in den Sommer hinein.
With the number of COVID-related deaths in Germany now over 40,000, an even harsher lockdown could be around the corner. Schools and non-essential shops are already closed, but the government hasn't ruled out shutting down industry if the numbers don't improve.
These healthcare workers are registering to receive one of two vaccines approved for use in India. 300,000 medical professionals are being vaccinated at 3,000 sites around the country on Saturday, including Kiran Rawat.
I'm a little bit scared, but I'm also happy that we're being vaccinated first. I've been named as one of the first, so I'm happy about it, and I want everyone to get vaccinated so we can end COVID.
The government is planning to vaccinate 300 million people in the first half of this year. 30 million frontline workers in healthcare, sanitation, the police, the army and disaster management will be inoculated in the first few months. They'll be followed by people over the age of 50 and then those under 50 with underlying health conditions.
Cape Town is known the world over for its breathtaking sights. But for all its beauty, the city is battling to cope with the second wave of the coronavirus pandemic. COVID fatalities have skyrocketed in recent weeks. Overworked and exhausted, undertakers say they cannot keep up.
At the moment, we could hardly cope. We are extremely busy with funerals, especially now with the COVID. And we are even running out of space in our mortuaries. We're running out of coffins.
Manufacturers of coffins are working overtime to make up the shortages and meet demand.
It is a big worry, but it's not really the shortage of the coffins or the shortage of the wood that's really the problem. It's more the influx of death that is happening.
Many believe the situation here is only going to get worse.
For the city of Cape Town, overall for the province, we had 5,000 deaths in the first wave. We're projecting to have between 5,000 and 7,000 deaths for the second wave.
The steep increase in COVID-related deaths is also putting additional strain on burial sites. This is Maitland Cemetery. It is Cape Town's oldest and largest burial site. It's been around for 135 years. Casualties of World War I and World War II are buried here. It is also the final resting place of those who succumbed to the smallpox epidemic in the mid-1800s. It's actually that epidemic that led to its construction. Now, nearly a year from South Africa's first reported coronavirus case, there are growing fears that this place would soon run out of space for victims of COVID-19.
It was a 5-point outline, essentially, of how it is that he plans to meet this goal, 100 million shots in 100 days. Take us through that.
It's a really ambitious one, and one that I think brought a lot of pause to people when he made it a few weeks ago, because there was real concern about the ongoing logistical challenges of getting those shots in the arm. And as you heard him say there today, and there's been some reporting throughout today, the Biden team is now incredibly frustrated and somewhat, caught off guard by the fact that the planning for not only the vaccine distribution, but just the ongoing federal response to the pandemic has been so shoddy and far less robust than they initially thought. This is the important part of why they wanted to get in and get started on transition briefings, for example, as soon as they could right after Election Day, and why that 20 or 12-day delay, however long it was, feels like ancient history now, was so critical, because it would have allowed them to get a better handle on this sooner. So look, last night, remember, he spoke, laid out a plan for $1.9 trillion in rescue attempts to get the country out from under this. And among the proposals he made was a $20 billion request to expand the national vaccination programs. And it would include things like encouraging the states to open up the vaccines to people beyond frontline workers and those above the age of 65, to try to accelerate it and say, look, if you get it out to more people, obviously you're helping the rest of the public get healthier sooner, or at least to be safeguarded against it. Wants to open up new federally backed vaccine centers across the country, mobile vaccination clinics that could get to harder to reach areas, rural communities, maybe some parts of big cities, encouraging the states and cities to find stadiums and other large public areas where they can not only be testing for COVID, but now also vaccinating against it.
It's early morning and the New America Arms Stores is packed. Here, all sorts of weapons are on display, from machine guns and semi-automatic rifles to this tiny little revolver, which Jennifer Wen always carries with her.
And it's very small, as you can see, it fits in the palm of my hand. We wouldn't typically consider this a caliber that you would use for self-defense. You'd want something more substantial. However, a bullet is still a bullet. And if this discharges to someone, it will cause damage. And depending on the shot placement, it could cause lethal harms.
Americans purchased more than 17 million firearms in 2020, a record number. The spike in sales started during the coronavirus pandemic and continued to rise during the Black Lives Matter protests over racial injustice. The November election has further divided the country, with both Republicans and Democrats suspicious of each other more than ever.
There are those politicians who basically, if you boil it down, really want control. And so we know historically that control cannot be achieved without disarming a population. There are many examples of that worldwide. And so we're seeing the extreme left want to disarm the populace. And the whole point behind it is for control. That's the truth of it. Nobody wants to admit that.
Robert Lewis thinks this is a defining moment in the history of the United States.
You can see already in American politics that there's a shift. We have the unreasonable Republicans that have supported Donald Trump, and now they're kind of backing off politely. I can see the point of a lot of the people who are opposed to it as to, let's try to be unified and not divided.
He wanted his children to witness how different their city is these days with its empty streets and barriers. This is a scene that's repeated across the country. The seat of the state government shut down to the public and sealed off. And that's because the FBI has warned of potentially large-scale and violent demonstrations. But this is something most Americans have never lived through before, and it's causing a lot of apprehension. 1 block away, a bomb scare at the Virginia Supreme Court building. Authorities sealed off the area, but no explosives were found. Just an example of how the country is on edge. The City Council has banned firearms at demonstrations. Many say their rights are being stripped away and vow to rally in support of the Second Amendment in the days leading up to the inauguration of Joe Biden. With the country deeply polarized, the image of public parks and buildings closed is one of a nation in fear of itself.
Never before in modern times has Washington, D.C. been seen like this. In the shadow of the Capitol Dome, the symbol of U.S. democracy, thousands of National Guard troops stand armed, ready to prevent a repeat of the attack on Congress that sent shockwaves around the world. Up to 25,000 troops will be in place by Wednesday's swearing-in ceremony for Joe Biden. Overnight, the US Capitol has been transformed with metal detectors, barriers and security checkpoints around key government buildings, leaving the city unrecognizable for those who live here.
Well, it is jarring, but I understand. I mean, we had, American terrorists that were trying to, create problems in a land of, quote unquote, the free.
It's been really scary because we're concerned not only for the Capitol and the buildings, the White House, the neighborhoods, because we live just very, very close to here.
Other cities are also locking down after law enforcement officials warned of pro-Trump rallies across the country starting over the weekend. In Michigan's state capital, officers erected metal fences around government offices. Similar scenes took place in Montgomery, Alabama, where concrete barriers have been set up outside the Capitol building. And in New York's state capital, Albany, armed police have been patrolling the streets. The deployment is unprecedented, but this time officials aren't taking any chances.
These National Guard members left Peoria, Illinois on Thursday, headed for the nation's capital.
It's definitely a lot different than what my friends are doing.
Bridget Wood is a freshman at Illinois State University.
You get excited to do it, but you also get nervous because you never know exactly what to expect.
Following the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol, the FBI is warning of more potential violence in the coming days.
We are seeing an extensive amount of concerning online chatter.
As a precaution, President-elect Joe Biden, known to travel on Amtrak between Delaware and Washington for decades as a senator, has scrapped plans to take the train to his inauguration.
Playing a vital role here.
About 21,000 troops will be stationed in D.C. for Wednesday's event. Vice President Mike Pence thanked those already in place.
We're going to swear in a new president, a new vice president. We're going to move our nation forward, okay?
President Trump is now the first American president to be impeached twice. 10 House Republicans broke with their party, joining 222 Democrats to approve a single article of impeachment. It charges the president with inciting the insurrection at the Capitol 1 week ago, an attack that left 5 people dead and dozens more injured. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she will immediately send the article of impeachment to the Senate so that the president can stand trial. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says that the trial will not happen before President-elect Joe Biden is inaugurated on January 20th. Here's CBS News' Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cordes with the latest.
On this vote, the ayes are 232.
Voting in a Capitol that has now become a fortress, House members impeached the 45th president for putting them in harm's way 1 week ago today as they were trying to ratify the results of the election.
This Capitol was stormed. People died because of the big lies that were being told by this president.
If inciting a deadly insurrection is not enough to get a president impeached, then what is?
The vote comes 13 months
Donald John Trump
after President Trump's first impeachment,
for high crimes and misdemeanors,
where he was charged with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress as part of a scheme to pressure Ukrainian leaders.
Donald Trump is a living, breathing, impeachable offense.
He is unrepentant. Congress must act for the good of this country.
Unlike the last impeachment, this time 10 Republicans voted yes.
There was a domestic threat at the door of the Capitol, and he did nothing to stop it.
I am not choosing a side, I'm choosing truth. It's the only way to defeat fear.
Today's article of impeachment accuses Mr. Trump of sparking an insurrection, citing not just his comments last Wednesday.
These people are not going to take it any longer.
But also his false claims about his loss.
We won the election by a landslide.
And his refusal to concede.
That was a rigged election.
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy didn't deny any of it.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters.
But he and other Republican members insisted now is not the time to punish President Trump.
They know that it is impossible for the Senate to remove him before his term expires. So what is the point?
I'm not saying the president didn't exercise poor judgment. But to criminalize political speech by blaming lawless acts on the president's rhetoric is wrong, Madam Speaker, and a very dangerous precedent. The criminals who stormed the Capitol that day acted on their own volition. They are responsible for their actions.
If we want unity, this is not the way.
Democrats rejected that argument.
Never as a criminal defense attorney did I say, Judge, yeah, my guy completed the armed robbery, but let's heal now. No, there was accountability. There was accountability then. There should be accountability now.
And so the battle moves now to the Senate. Speaker Pelosi has already named 9 impeachment managers who will serve as prosecutors in the trial to come. Senate Leader Mitch McConnell said today he will not bring the Senate back early, meaning the trial could start just as President-elect Biden is taking office.
President Trump watched the impeachment vote unfold from his private office in the White House. Shortly after the vote, the White House released a recorded message, but the president did not address the impeachment. Rather, he commented and condemned last week's attack on the Capitol. He also addressed reports of more demonstrations planned ahead of the inauguration.
Whether you are on the right or on the left, a Democrat or a Republican, there is never a justification for violence. No excuses, no exceptions. America is a nation of laws. Those who engaged in the attacks last week will be brought to justice. Now I am asking everyone who has ever believed in our agenda to be thinking of ways to ease tensions, calm tempers, and help to promote peace in our country.
For more now, I am joined by Nancy Cordes, along with CBS News White House correspondent Ben Tracy. Thank you both. Ben, as we saw in that video, President Trump is now condemning the violence that we saw last week and is urging against violence ahead of the inauguration, though he still hasn't acknowledged that President-elect Biden actually won the election. What is the president's goal here? What kind of messaging do you expect from him in this last week for him in office?
Well, this video is really curious. So this comes just after the president was impeached, and yet in this more than 5-minute long video, he does not mention impeachment at all. Instead, a week after the attack on the Capitol and after this severe blow to his legacy, he's now condemning the violence in the most forceful terms yet. So this does appear to be an effort by the president to try to somehow put the genie back in the bottle and make it look like he is on the side of law and order instead of the side of inciting the folks who went to the Capitol and did what they did a week ago today, and which is the reason that he got impeached. So this seems to be the president kind of completely ignoring what happened today in terms of him being impeached. I can tell you here at the White House, impeachment's been met with a collective shrug. They all expected this to happen. They knew the outcome was not going to be good. There are very few people left here in the building, and those who are really are just kind of shrugging their shoulders as they pack their boxes now with just about 6 days left in this administration.
And Nancy, you heard Ben talking about them shrugging their shoulders over at the White House. Of course, they have been there before. This impeachment vote is historic for several reasons. I'm hoping you can talk to us a bit more about the significance of President Trump now being impeached for a second time.
Sure. Well, the fact that he has been impeached and it is bipartisan raises the chances, obviously, that when this goes over to the Senate for a trial, that perhaps he could be convicted. It would take a 2/3 majority, so about 17 Republicans at least joining all of the Democrats in order to convict. It would prevent him from ever being able to run again. Obviously, he will probably be out of office at that point, so he can't be removed.
We told you earlier this week that Twitter's share price fell after it banned President Trump. Well, the rout continues. Twitter is down 14% since January 6th. Facebook is down almost 7%. NTD's Grace Coulter has the details.
Social media giants are meeting with legal and financial backlash due to their increasing censorship. Facebook and Twitter have seen a combined $51.2 billion drop in market value over the last 2 days since they banned President Trump. A large number of accounts supportive of the president and outspoken about alleged election fraud were also deleted. In the latest purge, Google's YouTube removed new content from Trump's account and suspended his channel for at least a week. The president said on Tuesday that companies like Google, Twitter, and Facebook will fail due to censorship.
But I think big tech has made a terrible mistake and very, very bad for our country. And I believe it's going to be a catastrophic mistake for them.
But despite the financial backlash, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey says he stands by the company's decision. He tweeted, "I believe this was the right decision for Twitter." He said that public safety drives their policy and enforcement above all. And for those who Twitter and Facebook removed, you might be able to sue them for censoring or deleting your account, at least in North Dakota. 6 Republican state lawmakers are proposing a bill that could make this possible, but some legal experts say the proposed bill would not have an effect because of Section 230, because the federal law would override the state law. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
As Grace Coulter just said, it's not just the president's official accounts experiencing problems. Other accounts that are supportive of the president also say Twitter is targeting them too. The Students for Trump page says Twitter blocked them for no reason. It later reversed the decision. I reached out to Twitter for comment, but they didn't get back to me yet. Here's the founder of the Students for Trump, Ryan Fournier.
Initially, we really hadn't posted much on the account since January 6th, and we got a notification around 2 days ago where they suspended us for a 12-hour period. We got an email saying the account was locked, gave no violations, no specifics. And then so we said, okay, we'll wait the 12 hours. We're going to try to appeal it. And, you know, by the time you try to appeal it, it's going to be, you know, trying to get in touch with someone there. It would have been up anyway. So we waited. And we wake up the next day and we're locked out of the account for 7 days, which would go on beyond the inauguration. Same thing happened to Congresswoman Lauren Boebert as well, which made it seem to us that it was a targeted attack. Again, no reason as to why this ban was given to the Students for Trump account. So I tweeted out about it because I was furious. I was wondering, you know, why is this happening? We've never had infractions. We've never had anything against our account in the last 4 or 5 years that we've been operating it. What changed? What happened now? And the media just picked up on it, and Twitter came out and said, you know what, this is an error, quote unquote, error on our part. and the account has been restored since then.
You mentioned Congresswoman Boebert and obviously the president as well. Do you consider this a coordinated attack in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that. There's been many rumors that have come out from former Twitter employees over the years that there's sort of a blacklist, sort of a list of people that they're watching on a daily basis to make sure that they're, being good on their platforms. And so it's only a matter of time, I see. It does seem coordinated. One organization, Twitter, bans the president, then all of them follow within a day or so. It's just something where what we're dealing with right now, and you have conservatives all across the country flocking to platforms, going to Telegram to get their message across, as we've done as well. I know Project Veritas is on there, and they're about to leak a very, very sensitive conversation, or multiple conversations between Jack Dorsey and employees that highlight the real reason behind the ban of the president. So we're about to see that in the next 2 or 3 hours from what I'm told.
Incredible. I saw their PBS segment a couple of days ago. This is really incredible stuff. And if it were a coordinated attack, do you think, is there any justification given what we saw at the Capitol last week?
No, I wouldn't say so at all. Even the president on his social media feed was not inciting violence or terrorism, as some of these contributors on the left are calling it. The president just simply said in his last tweet, "I'm not attending the inauguration." And Jack Dorsey said last night, well, that to them, in all of their objectivity for whatever that means, was inciting and glorifying violence. When you take away the voice of a man who, for the last 4 years, woke up every day with thousands of articles against him, woke up to where it's almost he was getting punched in the face, his family was getting punched in the face, his supporters were getting punched in the face every single day. When you ban him, you don't make the problem go away. You make it even worse. You make a martyr out of him. As I've said many times in the past, when you ban people for having a different opinion, perfect example would be Laura Loomer. I don't agree with everything she says by any means, but when you ban her, you make a martyr out of these people. And then they get to go into a corner and their grievances build up, and more people tend to support them. And that's what you're going to see out of what happened here with Twitter banning the president, Twitter coming after us, Twitter coming after me, Charlie Kirk, all of these different people. You're going to see worse before it gets even better because of their actions as a private company. And let me say this, they have the right to do it. They have the right to do it. I'm small government. I do not believe in government intervention in an issue like this. But when they become too powerful, when they get to control public discourse, that is where you see problems, and you're seeing them right now with Twitter, with Facebook, all these big tech companies.
Ryan, really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
And Facebook is also facing legal pressure for how it treats smaller competitors. It now has until March to defend itself in a pretty big antitrust case brought by the Federal Trade Commission and some others. NTD's Tomo Zhimek has the details.
The judge overseeing 2 separate antitrust lawsuits against Facebook set a March deadline for the social media giant to respond to the allegations. In December, the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, along with a group of state attorneys general, sued Facebook, alleging the company broke the law to disadvantage smaller rivals. On Wednesday, a judge in the District of Columbia said Facebook has until March 10th to respond to the 2 complaints. In its lawsuit, the FTC accused Facebook of using its dominance to crush smaller rivals. It claimed that Facebook has engaged in a systematic strategy to eliminate threats to its monopoly. Part of this strategy included Facebook's acquisition of up-and-coming rival Instagram, snapping up the mobile messaging app WhatsApp, and imposing anti-competitive conditions on software developers. Facebook has pushed back against the lawsuit, arguing its acquisition of WhatsApp and Instagram already faced scrutiny and had been approved by regulators.
There's news just coming in of the social media platform WhatsApp, which has said that it's delaying new features regarding the use of data. There's been a huge backlash against 3 measures specifically. Why is the company having second thoughts, Catherine? Well, it's because of this huge amount of pressure from their users that they are planning to review this update. Now, WhatsApp announced change to its privacy terms, meaning that users of WhatsApp would have to agree to share their data with Facebook and Instagram. There was an instant outcry over this, and thousands of users flocked to rival messaging apps Signal and Telegram. So since then, WhatsApp has been engaged in damage control, trying to reassure its users about how they collect and use personal data. And they've just announced that they're rolling back the 8th of February deadline for accepting these changes to its terms of service. Now that policy change won't happen until the 15th of May. The company has admitted publicly that it needs to do a lot more to clear up misinformation about how privacy and security works on the platform.